Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 228. No matter who you vote for, you get inflation. So, we all know that inflation is the increase in the money supply. It is not rising prices, right? That's just basically misdirection on the part of the government and economists who work for the government and paid for by the government, right? So it's not rising prices, rather, it is the increase in the money supply. And if you've been following Elon Musk, then you know that increase in money supply, basically the biggest driver of that is government spending. So because the government promises to provide all of these different services to the people, well, they have to borrow money to be able to do it. We already know that the government is close to $36 trillion in debt, and that's as of October 2024. All right, we're getting very, very close to $36 trillion in debt. That's how much money the United States government has borrowed to pay for all of the promises that they have made to the American people. This is very serious because borrowed money has to be paid back eventually. Otherwise, people won't lend you money anymore. And you might have heard that the interest payment on the debt alone, just the interest payment, not paying down the principal, as all of us understand if we have credit card debt, came to $892 billion in 2024. It will be $1 trillion next year in 2025 and $1.7 trillion by 2034. Now, that, of course, is our government numbers, which always lowball, right? They always underestimate how bad it's going to be. Uh, there are only two things on the budget which cost more. That's Social Security and non-defense discretionary, whatever that is, okay? But definitely the interest payment is more than Medicare, is more than defense. And so that if that gives you an idea of just how much money is being spent on just simply paying the interest on the loans, on the borrowed money that the U.S. government has borrowed. So what you need to do, basically my point is that inflation, money printing, is the number one threat to this country. It's not Putin. It's not the fall of Ukraine. It's not Israel. It's not China. It's not Taiwan. No, none of these things, right? It's inflation, right? We see this everywhere that no matter what political speech we listen to, people are trying to hear and find solutions to the ever rising prices that they see in the supermarket. I said before that the only people unconcerned by this are people who are extremely wealthy at the moment and who believe that the economy is doing well, and that anyone who's struggling, well, don't worry about them, right? And so if inflation is the number one threat, then what you need to have is cuts in government spending, right? So the programs, the promises that politicians have made to their people, they have to say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any money to pay for this. Now, we all know that recently, after Hurricane Helene, while giving $750 to families in the hurricane-affected areas, they were sending billions, tens of billions of dollars overseas, which is kind of absurd. And yet, there's there should be more outcry, right? All of the politicians on Capitol Hill should be made to feel the pain for allowing something like this to happen. And hopefully for the elections this November, something will happen, but chances are high probability nothing will change, right? Because as soon as you get to Washington, all this inflation is used to also bribe politicians. And you bribe politicians in creative ways by giving them kickbacks or, trying to get them to play along with their political party so that certain corporations make more money. And so it's a very rigged system. It's very difficult for anyone with any kind of integrity to go to Washington and actually achieve something. But I looked at the political platforms of the two presidential candidates and what they are promising to do. And I was looking for spending cuts, right? So, in other words, in order to take a bite out of this massive debt uh, and the interest, which is the absolute number one threat for the United States, economic stability, even to be able to protect itself, that is the number one threat. So I'm looking at the platforms to try to figure out what they are going to cut, what program they are going to cut to make even the smallest of dents into this, ever rising government debt problem. So on the Harris platform, the very first thing is that she's going to cut the taxes on tips. So instead of cutting government spending, she's cutting revenue, government revenue, right? So taxes, we know, is what the government collects to pay for itself. And so at the moment, right, they're not collecting enough in tax revenue to pay for all the government that we are getting. Peter Schiff talks about this quite frequently, right? Government is not free. We have to pay for it, and we pay for it in taxes, right? So the government has resorted to inflation to impose the tax on the people without them actually knowing it because it's not a direct tax. So instead of cutting spending, they're going to cut revenue, right? It's a small one, but cut taxes on tips, right? And since the economy is destroyed, a lot of people have been working in the service industry. And a lot of people also who before didn't collect tips, now they're asking for tips. And so tips are everywhere, right? And so why not cut the tax on those tips, especially since money transactions are largely digital, then it becomes hard to avoid paying taxes on tips. But then she's saying, okay, we're going to cut the taxes on tips. She also is proposing to spend more money on the child tax credit, right? Credit sounds like a good, nice word, but really what we're doing is having the government give more money to people who have children. $6,000 for newborns and $3,600 for younger kids to phase out, right? There's no detail in terms of what the annual income of the family must be under in order to qualify for these tax credits, but nevertheless, it's a proposal to spend more money. Housing, she proposes to build 3 million more homes and rental units. And in order to achieve this, she's going to set aside $40 billion to fund local governments for their low housing problems, right? Low number of available housing units, right? So the logic is that if you have more housing units, the prices should go down, and so therefore people can buy homes. But and to people who paid their rent on time for 2 years, they will get $25,000 to help pay for a down payment. Oh, isn't that nice? So that is more spending, right? Uh, then she goes and says that, well, the people who made her website, that they're going to fight price gouging. In other words, what's going to happen there is that anyone who raises their prices, right, they are going to be punished. And so really what's going on is businesses don't want to raise their prices. They have to because their expenses are going up. And so if you disallow businesses from raising their prices, then what you're doing is you're trying to close businesses, particularly small businesses. You want them to close. You're going to force them to close. So this is kind of the trick that politicians do. They blame businesses for raising prices to cover rising costs, which have been created by inflation. So by fighting inflation, they're really all they're doing is making inflation worse and blaming the victims for the problems of inflation. That's pretty crazy. Lowering the cost of drugs, well, that is made possible by government picking up the bill. So that is just another spending increase there. Climate change, all these proposals to, fight climate change, which is just basically a big money pit. You're not cutting spending at all. You're going to increase spending. She also proposes to have tuition-free college. Tuition-free college, come on. So at the same time they're doing loan forgiveness, they're also going to do away with tuition for college. So it's tuition free. But of course, it's not free. It means that taxpayers are now going to pay for college educations. That is to say, people who don't go to college now have to pay for the tuition of people who do go to college and then study advanced hand weaving or whatever, right? Graduate, not get employed, have, uh, you know, and basically maybe collect on welfare, whatever. But college, excuse me, college, right, is not giving you the return on your investment. When it comes to war, Harris is proposing to continue to support Israel and Ukraine, which basically means billions and billions of dollars, right? So there is nothing here which shows any kind of cutting at all. And that's what we're looking for. If you really want to try to fight inflation, try to pay down this debt, we have to find and have politicians propose spending cuts. And so obviously there's nothing there in the Harris platform. So let's look at the Trump platform. On the landing page, he has a listing of, I guess, 20 things that he's going to do. Seal the borders and stop migrant invasion. Okay, well, sealing the border requires lots of money. So that is not a spending cut. And this is not a comment on whether the policy is necessary or not, right? We're looking for spending cuts, right? So carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. Of course, that's going to cost a lot of money. End inflation and make America affordable again. Well, yeah, yeah. So how are you going to do that? Do you even understand what inflation is? So just saying it just simply makes it a platitude. You're just giving lip service to the problem while making it worse by your platform. It's just kind of interesting that they do that. And credit the American educational system for not teaching kids about what inflation really is so that politicians can simply lie to their faces like this. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. So how are you going to do that? Right. Well, you're going to have to allow for more drilling. Okay, that's not a spending increase, but it's not a spending cut either. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower, all in caps, right? Well, that's nice, but how are you going to do that? And if you're going to do it through government subsidy, that just basically means more inflation, right? So how are you going to get companies to no longer outsource, right? So outsourcing is only done because it's cheaper to do so, and you need to make a profit. And so Trump seems to think that he can just simply get people to stop outsourcing, right? If I tell you to stop, you are going to stop. Yeah, like that worked for the drug war as well. Then it says large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Well, that's a cut on revenue, on government revenue, which they need to pay for their budget. And so if you keep cutting all of the taxes here and there, what you're going to do is increase the debt, increase the inflation, increase the interest payments. So that's not what we want. Defend our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to bear arms. Yeah, okay. What are you going to do that's a wash, right? It's not a budget cut or a budget add, really. That's what everyone in government is supposed to be doing. Next, prevent World War III, restore peace in Europe and the Middle East, and build a great Iron Dome missile defense shield over our entire country, right? All made in America. So that is a big fat increased spending, right? And you've heard me before in another episode that the Iron Dome thing, it doesn't work, right? When the other country has hypersonic missiles, okay, it's not going to work. Next, end the weaponization of government against the American people. Oh, okay. Well, neither cut nor spending increase. Stop the migrant crime epidemic, demolish foreign drug cartels, crush gang violence, and lock up violent offenders. Yeah, that's more spending, right? DEA type stuff, more crowding in prisons, more overloading for the criminal justice system. Yeah, that's a big fat increase in spending. Rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., make them safe, clean, and beautiful again. Rebuild our cities. Oh, yeah, that is a giant government spending increase right there, right? Because now you are going to use taxpayer money to fund people to rebuild their city. Next, strengthen and modernize our military. Oh, I made a joke not that long ago, right? That spending on the interest has now surpassed defense spending. So government logic says, got to spend more on military. And there it is, right on Trump's platform. So that's a big fat increase in spending right there. Keep the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Well, how are you going to do that? You have to cut government spending, which clearly is not happening in this platform either. Next, fight and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts, including no changes to the retirement age. Oh, okay. Well, if you want to do that, you gotta cut government spending. Social Security is the number one item on the budget. So that's going to be, and Medicare is third or fourth on the list of big spending, right? But so far, how are we going to pay for it? Buy more debt, right? That's basically the message. So now you're going to increase the debt, right? Next, cancel the electric vehicle mandate. Oh, that might be a little bit of a, actually, it's just a mandate, right? And regulations. So there's no cutting of spending and there's no adding of spending. Cut federal funding for any public school, any school pushing critical race theory, racial, radical gender ideology, and inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content on our children. Okay, but that's not like a lot of money cutting, but it's a little bit, but it's not going to make it compared to the increase in government and spending on the military. Yeah, that's not going to really make a dent, a noticeable, even a little bump on the road. Nothing. Keep men out of women's sports. Yeah, okay. Neither cut nor increase. Deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. Yeah, that's a big spending increase right there, right? Who's going to pay for the deportations? You know what I mean? Secure our elections, including the same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. That's more spending. Unite our country by bringing it to new and record levels of success. Yeah, that's a platitude. So basically, in neither Trump nor in Harris's platform do you see any kind of cutting at all. And maybe there's cutting behind the scenes. I don't know. Maybe you can't get elected if you tell people how you're going to slash government. But that is what you need to do, right? Javier Milei in Argentina, that's what he did. He slashes all these government jobs. That's one way of reducing government spending, right? And I know that Trump said that Elon Musk was going to become part of the efficiency bureau to cut, departments like the way he slashed X. I wish, but I doubt that actually is going to happen because it's not part of the platform. But that's what you need to do. And Javier Milei brought the crazy inflation rates that were happening, and it might have been triple digit, it might have hit 100% inflation before Milei took office. Now that he's taken office, it's down to the single digits already in just a few months. That's what we need here in the United States. That's how you control inflation. That's how you begin to start paying down the debt. So Trump needs to slash the government. He needs to propose slashing the government. The very government that tried to lock him up forever, the same government that tried to throw him in jail, the same government that weaponized the law And what after went after him, he's got to slash all of that stuff. He needs to abolish agencies, right? Like Space Force. Hello, come on, get rid of that, right? Uh, get rid of all the regulatory burdens, right? He did this thing where if you write a new regulation, you got to get rid of two, which was okay, but it's got to be more. It's like you want to pass a new regulation, you got to get rid of 1,000, right? Just get rid of them all. You got to get rid of protectionism, protections to domestic economy, including tariffs. You got to get rid of that. Allow people to find and be able to buy the things at the lowest price anywhere in the world. One example is the sugar tax, right? Because of sugar tariffs, right? So people who want to buy cheap sugar, and sugar is sugar, right? It's not like American sugar tastes better than African sugar. No, it doesn't matter. Sugar is sugar, okay? And so, but there's a huge tariff imposed on foreign sugar to the point that what is it? It's like $30 billion is it 30 billion? Yeah, $30 billion or 3 billion. I forget exactly, but there's a huge tariff imposed on imported sugar. You can't make products cheaply in America if the sugar is so expensive, and that's why Americans always look for sugar substitutes like corn syrup. Some companies, which their product is pure sugar, 100% sugar, cannot operate here in the United States. And what's pure sugar? That would be candy. So the Lifesavers company, for example, had to move to Canada, where there is no tariff on sugar, right? And so when a company like Lifesavers goes to another country, then you are all the jobs leave with it, right? And all the revenue, also the tax revenue from that company not being in the United States, that's got to hurt as well. And those are some of the things that Trump promises to undo. But how do you undo that while you're not getting rid of the regulatory burden, all of the tariffs, and all that other kind of stuff? So that's just a brief overview. I thought I'd just let you realize that all of these things that they're promising just simply increases government spending, which means it's going to increase the amount of interest payments that need to be made, which basically means we are going to have more inflation. I mean, and people are higher inflation, right? And people are even going to are saying that we're probably going to look at a bit of hyperinflation as well. And what's going to make it worse, of course, is the BRICS, right? So they know that, hey, the United States is destroying its own currency. We got to get out of the dollar. And when the dollar does collapse, then anyone who wants to do business with us, they have to do it our way, not using the dollar. And so it really is the number one threat. It is the number one priority of our election. But, people are just simply not talking about it in the way that they should. All the wars should stop. All the spending should stop. Cut and fire all of these government workers, roll back all the regulation, and then maybe we can save the dollar, or maybe the crash won't be so bad. Otherwise, buckle up, Spanky. It is going to be a rough ride. So, what's the hope? The hope is that, well, what would be the silver lining? Silver lining is that those of you who are listening to this podcast, you've been making preparations. You saw the signs, and you've been making preparations over the last decade or so, so that when everything does hit the fan, then you have a network of neighbors, of family and friends that you can rely on, help each other, cooperate with each other to be able to get through all of the rough times. And maybe in the process, we'll be able to rediscover what it means to love your neighbor, right? Seek de-escalation, try to be friendly and nice to each other, mind our own business, get busy working. Maybe that's what will happen, hopefully. But that's it for this episode. I will talk to you next time.